Nigerian secret police officers from the Department of State Services, DSS, along with representatives from the Enugu state government, have arrived in Finland to assist Finnish authorities in the legal case against Simon Ekpa. The Finnish National Bureau of Investigation requested help from Nigeria to support ongoing investigations and legal proceedings against Simon Ekpa, leading to this joint intervention. The Enugu state government sent officials alongside the DSS, offering to testify and provide evidence of alleged atrocities linked to Simon Ekpa. Simon Ekpa's lawyer, Carl Kumure, also referred to as Kalgmer, is reportedly under pressure and accused of not being suitable to represent Simon Ekpa, sparking concerns within Simon Ekpa's camp. A well-known African activist is urging Simon Ekpa to appoint an African co-counsel to ensure cultural understanding and fair representation, suggesting Carl Kumure may not fully grasp the nature of the United States of Biafra (USB) movement. Carl Kumure defends his record, claiming extensive experience and revealing his legal strategy, a comprehensive defense strategy involving bringing in community members and witnesses to support Simon Ekpa's case. Despite Carl Kumure's efforts, many activists insist an African lawyer must join the team to ensure fairness and contextual understanding of the political struggle. They also claim that US President Joe Biden is suffering from advanced prostate cancer, suggesting that this news explains his early withdrawal from the 2024 presidential race. However, a critic has criticized Nigerian leaders for neglecting local development, comparing them unfavorably to other countries like France that are investing in futuristic projects like robotic armies. He concludes by claiming growing international support for the Biafra movement and increasing pressure on the Finnish government, while calling for more proactive legal and diplomatic steps by Biafran activists. When the news broke that officers from the Department of State Services in Nigeria had landed in Finland, a ripple of tension spread not only through the Finnish legal corridors, but also among African political circles, particularly within supporters of the United States of Biafra movement. This story was more than just a diplomatic gesture. It symbolized a new phase in an already complex legal and political battle involving Simon Ekpa, the most vocal leader of the self-proclaimed United States of Biafra. But the Nigerian government's decision to send these officers, along with representatives from the Enugu state government, marked the beginning of a significant turning point in what many are now calling a defining moment in African political resistance abroad. Simon Ekpa, a lawyer and political activist residing in Finland, has long been a controversial figure. Through his broadcasts, statements, and directives, he has become one of the most well-known voices advocating for Biafran independence. For many Biafrans, he is a symbol of defiance and strength. For others, including many in the Nigerian government, he is viewed as a destabilizing agent responsible for promoting unrest in southeastern Nigeria. The Finnish National Bureau of Investigation, Finland's equivalent of a federal law enforcement body, officially requested assistance from the Nigerian government as part of its ongoing legal investigation into Simon Ekpa's activities. This request was not made lightly. According to sources close to the case, the Finnish authorities wanted first-hand testimonies, physical evidence, and official records that could only come from Nigerian soil. They wanted clarity. They wanted context. They wanted cooperation. In response, the Nigerian federal government took decisive action. They authorized the Department of State Services to lead a delegation of investigative officers, and with them came selected representatives from the Enugu state government. the Enugu state delegation did not come empty-handed. Their role was clear: to testify and present material evidence allegedly linking Seaman Ekpa to acts of violence and civil disturbances in Enugu and neighboring states. Their objective was not just to support the investigation, it was to speed up the legal process in Finland and potentially push for a resolution that aligned with Nigeria's national security interests. The arrival of the Nigerian delegation caused an immediate stir. Inside Finland's legal community, the presence of foreign intelligence officers was highly unusual. And in Seaman Ekpa's camp, anxiety and uncertainty began to mount. But it wasn't just the presence of these Nigerian agents that made headlines. What truly intensified the drama was the growing controversy surrounding Seaman Ekpa's Finnish lawyer, Karl Kumuri. Karl Kumuri, who is sometimes referred to as Kalgma in news reports, had been leading Seaman Ekpa's legal defense since the start of the case. Karl Kumuri is not new to the courtroom. He is a seasoned Finnish lawyer with many years of legal experience and a portfolio filled with complex cases. But this case was different. This was not just a case about breaking the law. This was a case deeply rooted in cultural identity, historical struggle, and transnational activism. As pressure mounted on Karl Kumuri, voices from the African activist community began to question whether he was the right person to represent someone like Seaman Ekpa. An influential African activist publicly urged Seaman Ekpa to appoint a co-counsel from Africa, someone who could understand the history, emotional weight, and socio-political meaning of the United States of Biafra movement. The criticism was not personal, they said. It was contextual. How could someone who had never lived the Biafran experience, who had never seen the scars of the Nigerian civil war, truly represent the case for a modern-day Biafran leader? Karl Kumuri did not take the criticism lightly. In a press statement, he defended his record, emphasizing his deep knowledge of Finnish law, his experience with international human rights cases, and his commitment to Seaman Ekpa's case. He also revealed a major detail about his legal approach, what he described as a comprehensive defense strategy. This strategy, he explained, would involve bringing in members of the community, both from Finland and Nigeria, to testify on Seaman Ekpa's behalf. These witnesses would provide alternative narratives, present evidence of political persecution, and explain the objectives and motivations behind Seaman Ekpa's activism. Despite Karl Kumuri's explanation, the calls for a Biafran, or at least African co-counsel, continued. Many in the United States of Biafra movement argued that having someone who understood the cultural dimensions of Biafran identity was not optional, it was essential. They said that a lawyer who shared the cultural lens of Seaman Ekpa would be better equipped to interpret his actions not merely as provocative or dangerous, but as rooted in a legitimate political struggle. At the same time, another twist emerged in the global political scene. A rumor surfaced, later supported by unofficial reports, claiming that President Joseph Biden of the United States was suffering from an advanced and aggressive form of prostate cancer. These reports suggested that the disease had metastasized to his bones and had significantly affected his health. Supporters of this theory connected the diagnosis to his earlier and rather sudden decision to withdraw from the 2024 United States presidential race. While this might seem unrelated to Seaman Ekpa's case, political commentators in Nigeria quickly drew comparisons. They praised Joseph Biden for stepping down when he realized his health could affect his leadership. In contrast, they criticized former Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, accusing him of spending billions of naira on overseas medical treatment instead of resigning or investing in Nigeria's healthcare infrastructure. They pointed to the vast amounts of money reportedly over 5.4 billion naira, spent on Muhammadu Buhari's medical trips abroad during his tenure, arguing that those funds could have built several first-class hospitals in Nigeria. This criticism opened a wider conversation about governance in Africa, while nations like France were reportedly working on integrating robotic soldiers into their armies by the year 2040. Nigerian leaders were being mocked for relying on prayer and fasting to solve deeply rooted security issues. A particularly sharp example came from Borno State, where the governor declared every Monday a fasting and prayer day to fight insecurity. Activists pointed out the absurdity of such an approach when terrorists were still being apprehended in airports, some allegedly trying to travel for religious pilgrimages while facing serious charges at home. Back in Finland, the case against Simon Ekpa was intensifying. The Nigerian Department of State Services officers were not just passive observers. They reportedly brought documents, intelligence reports, and testimonies linking Simon Ekpa to unrest in Nigeria. The Enugu state government officials offered to testify, stating that they had direct evidence connecting Simon Ekpa's broadcasts to violent attacks and shutdowns in southeastern Nigeria. But the legal battlefield was now more complicated. If Simon Ekpa was to be tried fairly, his defense team had to match the strength and coordination of the prosecution. That is why Karl Kumure's comprehensive defense strategy mattered. He planned to mobilize character witnesses from the Biafran community in Finland. He intended to bring in experts who could speak about the historical oppression of Biafrans in Nigeria. He wanted to present evidence showing that Simon Ekpa's actions were political speech and not incitement. Still, activists worried that even the best strategy might fall short without the right messenger. They wanted someone who could speak the language of the oppressed. They wanted someone who could channel the pain and hopes of the Biafran people in court. That person, they argued, would have to be African. Amidst all these developments, rumors began circulating that the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, was avoiding public appearances due to mounting international pressure. Some speculated that neighboring countries, sympathetic to the United States of Biafra cause, were quietly applying pressure on Finland to ensure Simon Ekpa received fair treatment. Others claimed diplomatic efforts were underway to build a coalition that could defend the rights of exiled African activists abroad. It was clear that this case had grown beyond Finland. It had become a symbol. For some, it was a test of how Western democracies handle foreign political activists. For others, it was a measure of how far the Nigerian government would go to silence voices abroad. And for Simon Ekpa himself, it was now a matter of political survival. The story was no longer just about one man facing legal charges in a foreign land. It had evolved into a global conversation about justice, identity, governance, and resistance. The Department of State Services had crossed continents to deliver their message. The Enugu state government had taken a bold step to influence a foreign trial. A Finnish lawyer had found himself at the heart of a storm that questioned not only his skills, but his cultural competence. And the Biafran diaspora had been forced to confront a legal and moral question. Who should speak for them when the world is watching? As Simon Ekpa awaits the next phase of his trial, one thing is certain. This is not just a legal drama unfolding in a courtroom in Finland. This is history being written in real time. And for millions of Biafrans, both at home and in exile, the outcome could shape the course of their political struggle for years to come. As Simon Ekpa's case unfolded further in Finland, the public debate in both Europe and Africa grew louder and sharper. News channels across the African continent began picking up the story, presenting daily updates on what they now referred to as the trial of exile. The phrase itself reflected the larger symbolic meaning of the case, one that went far beyond Simon Ekpa as a person and extended to the larger struggle for justice, sovereignty, and the fight for identity among the Biafran people. In the days following the Nigerian Department of State Services' arrival in Finland, Finnish prosecutors met in closed-door legal meetings to review the material evidence brought from Nigeria. Legal analysts speculated that the evidence package included internal intelligence reports, bank transactions, intercepted messages, and transcripts of Simon Ekpa's broadcasts that allegedly encouraged civil disobedience, market shutdowns, and sit-at-home orders in southeastern Nigeria. However, the defense team, led by Karl Kumure, countered these allegations fiercely. Karl Kumure argued that Simon Ekpa had always acted within the bounds of his rights as a political activist and broadcaster. He framed Simon Ekpa's actions not as calls for violence, but as civil protest, emphasizing that peaceful resistance is a hallmark of democratic society. Karl Kumure presented this defense while also planning to expand his legal team with international legal experts who could speak specifically on freedom of speech under European Union law. But as Karl Kumure fought legal battles in court, pressure was building from within the Biafran movement itself. In cities like Enugu, Aba, Onitsha, and Owerri, many members of the United States of Biafra movement held rallies in support of Simon Ekpa, carrying placards that read, "Self-determination is not a crime," and "Justice for Biafra in Europe." There was a sense of urgency in these protests. People feared that without enough public attention and global support, Simon Ekpa could be extradited to Nigeria, a move that many feared could result in torture or even assassination. This fear was not baseless. There were chilling memories from the past. Many still remembered how Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, was kidnapped in Kenya and brought back to Nigeria in a move that the United Nations later condemned as illegal. For Biafrans, that incident was still fresh, and they believed it could happen again. To them, Finland now had the power to either protect or betray another freedom fighter. Inside Finland, the political reaction remained measured but tense. The Finnish parliament avoided commenting directly on the legal case, but human rights groups inside the country began expressing concern. One well-known Finnish non-governmental organization, known for monitoring civil liberties in the Nordic region, released a public statement warning that international pressure from a foreign government must not compromise Finland's reputation for fair and independent trials. Meanwhile, the political atmosphere in Nigeria remained deeply divided. Supporters of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration praised the Finnish investigation as proof that the Nigerian government was finally taking a proactive approach to international justice. They described Simon Ekpa as a menace to national security and argued that his influence was undermining peace efforts in the southeastern region. But others were not so sure. Several lawmakers, including some from southeastern Nigeria, expressed concern about the heavy-handed approach being taken. One senator from Anambra State questioned why the federal government was more focused on prosecuting an activist abroad than on addressing the root causes of unrest at home. He argued that if the government invested half as much energy in education, infrastructure and economic development in Biafran regions, movements like the United States of Biafra would not be so popular. In fact, new reports were beginning to circulate about poor living conditions in parts of the southeast. In Ebonyi State, for example, several communities were reportedly still using contaminated water sources despite multiple promises from the state government to construct boreholes. In Abia State, many roads remained impassable due to years of neglect. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.